Hello, everyone. This is Dan Burnham, Chair of the Radnor Township Environmental Advisory Council. We are sponsoring tonight's presentation along with Radnor Conservancy. Our speaker today is writer-naturalist Michael Wheelbacher. He's an environmental educator with 40 years of experience teaching through lectures, walks, and newspaper essays, theatrical performances, and radio. So he's a multimedia force himself. He is the author of Wild Philly, exploring the amazing nature of Philadelphia. In fact, he has a presentation on the natural flora and fauna in our backyards, which he presented last year as part of our EAC lecture series. Mike travels the region and he gives various opportunities to walk in the natural world and lecture on its wonders. He does give lectures. In fact, in our EAC series, besides the flora and fauna in your backyard, he's presented on microplastics and climate change in the Philadelphia area. And please go to his website, Mike Wheelbacher. His name, I believe, is on the ad, mikewheelbacher.com. That's one word. To learn more about his presentations and other work. Tonight, he's going to present our fungal future, how mushrooms will save the world. Beneath our feet and within every ecosystem lies a hidden network of extraordinary organisms working wonders. These are fungi. This lecture will introduce you to the emerging importance of mushrooms in solving critical ecological environmental issues. And after this lecture, I want to bring your attention to two more lectures we have scheduled as part of our EAC series. Wednesday, January 21st, Steve Schreiner of Schreiner Tree Care will talk about beech tree leaf disease. That'll be at 7 p.m., January 21st. And on Tuesday, April 28th, Mike Wheelbacher will be back to talk about the buzz about bees, pollinators in peril. That again is at April 28th at 6 p.m. Ads for that on the Radnor website and social media will be posted about a month beforehand. So Mike, I'll turn the mic over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for having me. Thank you to the EAC. Thank you to Ian for all your help. Thanks to the Radnor Conservancy for co-sponsoring tonight as well. So looking forward to this. And Dan, we've let all the people in. They're all here, right?
Yes, I know it's
Yay.
hard if they're coming from work, but the show must go on.
You got it. Okay, great. Great. So great to be here, as Dan mentioned. As a number of lectures I travel with, Hotter, Wetter, Weirder, about climate change, which I gave a bit back here in Radnor. And others that you haven't yet seen, like the complete monarch butterfly life cycle, how they go to Mexico and back. It's a pretty remarkable story. And as Dan mentioned, I do nature walks throughout the region. My website has on the bottom left a calendar of where I'm going to be headed. So check that out. And the book is Wild Philly. It includes 25 trips in the area plus 4 extra credit trips. It turns out to be a great holiday present, if I may be, if I may do a plug for myself, because you're giving people a whole year of nature walks. Their walks are calendarized, so 25 walks across the whole calendar year. So actually, it was a big surprise to me when I discovered that people enjoy giving this as a holiday present. So we're going to talk about our fungal future and figure out how and will mushrooms save the world. And this is especially important to us here in southeastern Pennsylvania, because not too far from us is the mushroom capital of the world, Kennett Square. where mushrooms are grown in these long warehouses, stacked up shelves, these long shelves. It's crazy. Thousands, millions in this kind of warehouse, and they're grown all year inside. It's a remarkable thing to see. Kennett Square grows about 60% of America's mushrooms. It's valued at that much, almost $3 billion. It turns out that mushrooms are the state's number one cash crop. If you had uh, tried in a trivia contest to name Pennsylvania's number one cash crop, I'm not sure you would have said mushrooms. You might have said, I would have said corn or soybeans. Employs 10,000 people annually, so not year round. I mean, not seasonally anymore. The vast majority of its workers, if not all, are from Mexico and Central America, a significant portion of which are undocumented. So I've always been curious how this is going to play out as we move forward. But nonetheless, Kennett Square is important to us and mushrooms, and there's an annual mushroom festival, the big holiday celebration in the third weekend in September in Kennett Square. So that's that story. So I was pondering the question, will mushrooms help save the world? And I went to Google's Genesis and asked it that question, will mushrooms save the world? And I got what I thought was a really interesting answer. This is a bold question, so I'm being judged by AI. And while it's an oversimplification to say they will single-handedly save the world, the scientific and environmental communities are increasingly recognizing their incredible potential to address a wide range of global challenges. So that's what we're going to wade into tonight. But first, I want to do a little sidestep. You might not know, well, you've heard of LSD, I'm sure, but what you might know is that not know is LSD was derived from a fungus, a kind of ergot. So hallucinogens like LSD came to us from fungus, and of course, magic mushrooms are a fungus. And there's this wonderful little meme on the web. Are you psilocybin? The name for the genus name for magic mushrooms. Are you psilocybin? Because you blow my mind, it says. So I want to begin with 8 things about fungi that will blow your mind. So I'm hoping to right at the top blow your mind about a number of things about the fungal family. So number one, while we've named 150,000 species of fungi, sounds like a lot, there may be 2 to 3 million more undiscovered. Some say 4 or 5. So we don't even know yet how many fungi live on this planet. 2 or 3 million more may be discovered. So there are 10 species of fungi for every one species of plant, we think. And they come in just a remarkable rainbow of colors. They are astonishingly beautiful, all kinds of colors. Um, and you name a color, even blues and greens, and fungus can do it, which is crazy. And I've never seen it yet, but there is even a purple fungus. I'd love to see that too. So great colors in fungi. Um, and they even have remarkable shapes. So not just colors, but extraordinary shapes as well, and sizes. There we go. Whoops. My cursor's giving me a little problem. I apologize. Let me back up. There we go. And some even glow in the dark. It turns out that there are a number of mushrooms that are bioluminescent. They actually glow. Haven't yet figured out why, but numerous species of fungi actually glow in the dark. And their names are remarkable. Look at these shapes. Does that look like someone's hand that's coming out of the forest floor? This one actually goes by the common name of dead man's fingers. Great name for that. Here's a mushroom who's called devil's urn, right? They have a lot of spooky names like witch's butter, devil's urn, because some of them are poisonous. So we're sort of scared of them a bit. And there's something evil about them. Witch's butter is also called, you can see that at the bottom, yellow brain. It's a great name for a fungus. And yeah, some are poisonous. So this white one, this bright white one, goes by the name of destroying angels, belongs to a big grouping of amanita mushrooms. Destroying angel is also called the death cap mushroom. Um, if you are a big fan of murder mysteries, this has been in murder mysteries, especially British ones. So people poison each other with death cap mushrooms. Here's one I love, stinkhorn. And it does stink. It smells really badly because it's trying to attract these guys. So it stinks like rotting meat. Flies come in and they grab the spores. So the spores aren't flying through the air. Flies are grabbing the spores. But if you notice how this silly thing looks, the scientist who named it, I think, was channeling his inner seventh grade boy. He gave it the name phallus because of what is its obvious appearance. So crazy what they look like. So there's all the mushrooms that you know of are fungi, right? But molds and mildews, like on this orange or on this loaf of bread, that's also fungi. They're in the same clan as well. Here is a mold attacking a mushroom. So one member of the fungus family attacking another member of the fungus family. Ergots, like this rye ergot, that attack grains. They belong to the rusts and smuts that are also part of the fungal clan. Big clan. Chytrids you've never heard of. They're small, they're ancient, they're among the first of the fungi to evolve. They are small aquatic parasites. And unfortunately, they're responsible for the worldwide loss of amphibians that's going on right now. So something happened in the relationship with amphibians, but chytrids are an important grouping. Yeasts are fungus too, believe it or not. Can you believe that? So therefore, bread and beer come to us courtesy of those fabulous fungi. You know what these are? You probably can guess. You've seen these on rocks, you've seen these on branches, sometimes even on park benches that people don't sit on, right? These are lichens. Lichens are not a fungus, but they are the marriage of a fungus with algae. Maybe you learned this in school way back in the day, and what they've learned since I was a kid anyway is that bacteria are often part of the party. So that it's a fungus plus an algae plus bacteria altogether. But nonetheless, that fungus plus algae equals lichen. The fungus gives it structure and shape. The algae photosynthesizes and makes food. So that's how the two cooperate. And that kind of cooperation is called symbiosis. And the word symbiosis, which you probably have heard, was coined to explain what a lichen is. So that's how we got the word symbiosis. And there are numerous kinds of lichens as well, like these British soldiers, given the name because of the red hats that they wear. Reindeer lichen. You go for a nice walk in the New Jersey Pine Barrens, you're going to see more reindeer lichen than you ever imagined possible. So it's around here as well. And so there are so many different kinds of fungi. It's likely only 90% have yet to be discovered, which is insane. So lots of them. Second thing that might blow your mind, while fungi were once classified as plants, people have more in common with fungi than, whoops, than fungi have with plants. Let me say that again. You and I have more in common with fungi than they have with plants. When I was a youngster in school, um, I think when I was really young, they were still classified as plants, right? They grow out of the ground like plants do. They have these root-like things, which plants seem to. They have spores, which ferns do. So lots of reasons they were thought of as plants. But then somewhere in the 50s, they were separated into their own kingdom. Then a third kingdom. We since have five, but anyway, here they go. So go back a billion years, and you can see here, a billion years ago in that circle, that fungi, um, actually plants split off from this guy who then split into fungi and animals. So here's animals and fungi about a billion years ago, and here's plants over here. So we have more in common with them than they have with plants, which maybe is a surprise. In part, it's because they have chitin in there in the mushrooms that helps hold them up. And chitin, the only place chitin is found is in the shells of insects like this beetle, in the shells of crustaceans like shrimp and lobsters. Though an octopus is soft, it has a hard beak, and the beak is made of chitin. So that's one of the reasons that they're placed with us. This is Orosphera hiralde, and it has the distinction of being, wow, about 1 billion years old, making it one of the oldest fungi that we have that we know that we found. So this is a fossil, and they know it's a fungus because it has all these hyphae, these little growths, and we're going to learn about hyphae in just a moment. But this is these, so we know that they've been around for about 1 billion years. In fact, the third thing that will blow your mind, fungi were the first organisms to conquer land. It wasn't plants and it wasn't that fish that crawled out on its fins. It was fungi. Here's a quarry in Quebec, and you can see this tall shape in the middle of the rock. It's 420 million years old. They think it's a fungus. They've been arguing about it, but right now it's a fungus. Prototaxites. 420 million years ago, it's to 25 to 30 feet tall, making it a fungus 400 million years ago, both the largest and the tallest organism living on land, living on Earth at that time, which is crazy. And it's a fungus. Number four, fungi have saved millions of lives. You might know this, but it's important to remember. So penicillin, right, comes to us from the antibiotic penicillin, the original antibiotic, comes to us from a mold with the name penicillium. Hence, we called it penicillin. And it has saved over 500 million lives so far and counting. So if you've taken penicillin, thank a fungus. There's also cephalosporins. They're a fungus-derived antibiotic. Anti against life, biotic, right? So antibiotics fight bacteria, not effective against viruses, but fight bacteria. Because remember, in the evolutionary tree, we are closer to fungus than they are to plants. So fungi created chemicals to fight off bacteria because they're in close proximity to bacteria all the time. They're immersed in the soil. They got bacteria all around them. They invent these chemicals to fight off bacteria. And guess what? They work for us as well. I have to thank mushrooms for statins. I've been taking statins for a long time. I inherited my dad's high cholesterol. Thank you, Dad. And I've been taking statins for a while to stave off and my cholesterol has been great. So if you or are on statins or know somebody, these are derived from mushrooms. So you can thank mushrooms for that. Some of you might know of or have used cyclosporine. It goes by several other names. This comes to us from a mold. And it's used for a large number of things. It's an immunosuppressant. So cyclosporine is used to treat rheumatoid arthritis, psoriasis, Crohn's disease, nephrotic syndrome, eczema, and in organ transplants to prevent organ rejection, which has been incredibly useful. And again, has saved millions of lives. It's also an eye drop, believe it or not, for dry eye syndrome. So that's not, it's not all in good news with fungus. There are some things of the fungus family that harm us, as some of you may know. So athlete's foot, jock itch, ringworm, not a worm, but a fungus, yeast infections and thrush. Thrush is from a fungus named Candida, valley fever in the Southwest. If someone breathes in the spores, they're toxic. Lung infections like aspergillosis and pneumocystis pneumonia. Phew, that's a big list. But so I wish fungi were only helpful, but in some cases they hurt us as well. All right. Number 5. Can you picture a cubic inch, inch by inch by inch, right? Inches on 3 sides. 1 cubic inch of soil contains more than 8 miles of fungal hyphae, 8 miles. So go get a teaspoon of soil and try to picture 8 miles of anything in it, right? So let's look at how a mushroom is made. There's the cap, and the bottom of the cap are the gills, and the spores pour out of the gills. It's held up by a stem. The stem gets the cap above the ground, so the spores can fall out and the air can push them around. And then below that is mycelium. And this mycelium is going to be increasingly important as we work through how mushrooms will save the world. So mycelium is a mat that's underneath the mushroom. In fact, most of the organism is the mycelium. When it's ready to reproduce, it sends up the fruiting body, the mushroom that we see, and that makes the spores. But the organism is actually this giant mat that's underground. If you roll over a log, you might see the mycelial mat of a fungus that's eating the log. So it can actually eat wood, take the wood apart, decompose it. So that's all mycelia. One mycelium, two mycelia, and the mycelium is composed of hyphae, little tiny strands, not like roots at all, but they're tiny strands, and they're really small, 50, as much as 50 times narrower than human hair, if you can imagine that. So it's going through the soil, these little narrow channels, and they're so tiny, they're microscopic. That's how you can get 8 miles into 1 cubic inch. And in some species, the mycelial mat, there's no cell walls anywhere, so it becomes essentially one giant cell, which is a remarkable thing. So mushrooms, in many ways, are like icebergs, right? You just see the tip of it. You see that fruiting body. The organism is actually all the stuff underground, the mycelial mat, that is harder to see. So mushrooms are like icebergs. Now that you know about mycelium, number 6, we're closing in here on the 8 ways that mushrooms will blow you away. The world's largest organism is not the blue whale at 80 to 90 feet long, is not the sequoia tree that weighs in at, believe it or not, 4 million pounds. The world's largest organism is a honey fungus that grows and lives in the Pacific Northwest in Oregon and a national park, whose mycelium covers 3.5 square miles, 3.5 square miles of mycelium. What they've done is they've tested the DNA here and the DNA here and the DNA here and the DNA here. It's all one organism. Same exact genetic sequence. That's how they know that. 3.5 square miles, and it may be 2,400 years old, or maybe even older than that. They're not 100% sure. So it's been around for a long time. It is 3.5 miles, and it's got the great name, the humongous fungus. And that's the world's largest organism. Number 7, more than 90% of living plants connect to fungi underground through the mycelium. So the mycelial mat is under a forest. And in that forest, the mycelium actually wrap around roots and rootlets, and they connect them so that a tree over here can send resources to trees elsewhere in the forest. And if a tree over here is being eaten by an insect, it can put chemicals in the leaf and get the word out that this kind of insect is eating me right now. Get your defenses up. So it turns out that the trees in the forest are in communication. We're learning more about this all the time now. It's only a recent understanding. It is somewhat controversial among forest ecologists, but nonetheless, this is the new science, and it's been dubbed, wonderful name, the Wood Wide Web, the way that these trees are all communicating. Now, it comes at a cost, right? Oh, this is the mother tree. There's a wonderful book here behind me, Finding the Mother Tree by Suzanne Simard. So she's a forest ecologist. She did the groundbreaking research finding the mother tree. And that's the big tree in the forest. And some forests that sort of control, it's kind of the quarterback for the whole forest and deciding which trees win and which trees lose. If this tree over here is not doing so well, it'll send resources to that tree to help prop it up. And there could be as many as 200 different kinds of fungus species in around one tree, which is a remarkable thing. So talk about symbiosis, huh? But here's what's going on. The tree is sending sugars via the roots to the mycelial mat. In turn, the mycelium is breaking down, it's decomposing the wood and the rotting stuff and freeing up nitrogen and phosphorus, which is hard for a tree to do. So they're exchanging. The tree gets nitrogen and phosphorus, and the mushroom gets sugars. And because this work is so important, as much as 20% of the sugar a tree produces is given over to the Wood Wide Web and given to support the mushrooms that are connecting them all. Well, that's a remarkable thing. So, those are some astonishing ways that I hope blow your mind. Just how will mushrooms then save the world with this all as background information? Let's begin with the plastic crisis that we talked about in a full lecture a little bit ago, and I traveled with that lecture through the Delaware Valley as well. Microplastics, the invisible pollutant. And just a couple of highlights, for example, in the Pacific Ocean is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch made up of a lot of fishing nets, a lot of fishing line, but then a lot of plastic debris that is floated in from third world countries that line the Pacific Ocean, especially on the Asian side, where garbage is dumped into oceans. And so since the currents in the oceans flow in these gyres, these sort of giant whirlpools going a big circular motion, the garbage patch, the plastic gets trapped in there. So there's these floating mats of garbage, mostly plastic, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The Great Pacific one is the size of three Texases. So it's as big as three states of Texas across. There's a lesser one in the Pacific, and there's two in the Atlantic, one in the Indian Ocean as well. So there are five gyres of five giant patches of plastic swirling in the world's oceans. Right now, it's a problem. More than half of the plastics ever produced have been made since 2000 in the last 25 years. And look at the forecast for where it's headed. We're making a lot more plastic. And we still haven't figured out a good thing to do with it. Plastic recycling has broken down worldwide. It's not really working. I don't know where Radnor's goes and what they do with it, but I know many communities have struggled with finding vendors who will actually take and do something useful with plastic. So, and only about 9% of plastics are recycled anyway. In America, the vast majority, two-thirds is landfilled. Some is burned. I know in Montgomery County, we send trash to the incinerator on the Blue Route, where it's burned. So plastic ends up in there, not the recycled, but people aren't good at recycling and sorting. So whatever plastic they put in the trash is getting incinerated. So nonetheless, plastic recycling is an issue. And as you know, plastic lasts a very long time. The plastic straw at the bottom, 200 years. The plastic bottle top left, 450. Look at styrofoam top right. This nonprofit is saying it lasts basically forever. It does not decompose. Um, this is my Acme on Montgomery Avenue in Bala Cynwyd. And so, you see this a lot in the summertime where you've got the water bottles out front. What's probably going to be surprising to you is when the plastic bottles are sitting in sunlight and getting warmed up, the water is interacting chemically with the plastic. And so that one bottle of water they have measured 85,000 particles of microplastics in it. And microplastics are about the size of a rice grain or smaller, so 5 millimeters. Many are way, way, way smaller even than that. And as we have now looked in the human body, we have found microplastics everywhere in our hair, lungs, liver, breast milk, placenta in the infant who's getting nourished through the placenta. Since we're ingesting microplastics in our food, we're defecating it out, kidney, colon, blood. So there's some plastics that are so small they're not micro, they're nanoplastics, and they can actually go through our bloodstream. And brain tissue from people who have been diagnosed with dementia had, in some cases, up to 10 times as much plastic in their brains as everyone else. So we're taking in plastics through our food. It gets in there through a variety of ways that we talked about in that last lecture, but nonetheless, if you do reading on microplastic, it's pretty scary. And what we know is that we have a lot of microplastics in us. There are solutions to it. And I mentioned before that there are both micro and nanoplastics, microplastics here. But look, nanoplastics are so small that they're the size of viruses and DNA, and so that can get into the bloodstream. So plastics, remember, are simply complex hydrocarbons, and one of the specialties of fungus is to break down complex hydrocarbons like wood. They pull carbon compounds apart. Like take polyurethane, for example. Polyurethane is the stuff that we put on shelves, right, to make them last forever. But polyurethane also becomes, in its foam version, is the sponge, the ubiquitous kitchen sponge that we use, and the stuff that we spray insulation. Those are all polyurethanes, right? Um, and does this break down in the environment? Went back to AI again, went back to my friend Google Genesis and said polyurethane generally does not break down naturally at a significant rate. It is highly resistant to environmental degradation and is considered a persistent waste. So we got a problem with plastics lasting a long time. So then researchers, much of their surprise, in the rainforest in Ecuador, found this, unassuming looking mushroom, Pestilotiopsis microspora, got tiny spores, the mushroom that can eat plastic. And studies indicate that this fungus can actually survive by eating polyurethane. It can break it apart. And weirdly enough, it can do it in an anaerobic environment. It doesn't even need oxygen. So maybe at the bottom of a landfill, it can pull apart polyurethane, which is crazy. So inspired by this discovery, German scientists at Utrecht University began looking at what other fungi can essentially pull apart plastics. And this is an experiment that plastics are being devoured uh, by by fungus. And it turns out that there are many others. Penicillium can even do it to a degree. So all those are different kinds of mushrooms that have the ability to break down plastic. This last one, Pleurotus, is the famous oyster mushroom that people love to eat because it tastes like mushrooms. So this is a mushroom that can essentially grow on plastic. It can use the complex hydrocarbons in plastics as nourishment, but they can also break down polyethylene, high density polyethylene, low density polyethylene, polyvinyl chloride, PVC, PET, which is a really important plastic use, polystyrene, and even tire rubber. Polyethylene is really important. 34% of the plastics that we make is polyethylene. It's those ubiquitous plastic bags, now banned in many communities, but it's also saran wrap. It is milk jugs. There we go. And it's also the garbage bag that we love to hate too. There we go. Okay. So wait, so if oyster mushrooms can break down those plastics and we can eat oyster mushrooms, this introduces an interesting idea. So, from this professor at Utrecht, it turns out that several species can break them down, like the oyster mushroom, which is also edible. And she says, however, even though there is no plastic left in the finished product, right? There is no plastic left in the finished product, i.e., the mushroom. They taste sweet with the smell of anise or licorice. Convincing the general public to eat these mushrooms might be a hard sell. More studies are needed to determine the safety of doing so. If found to be safe, then this process holds potential to solve another problem, world hunger. Imagine so we can use mushrooms to break down plastics and feed people. That's pretty crazy. Shifting slightly, so much of the clothing that we now wear comes to us as plastic, nylon, rayon, polyester. These are all plastics, right? So companies now are taking that mycelium, and they're growing it in a sterile environment. And it grows in like a warehouse in a lab situation and becomes this mat, and they press it down and they make a leather-like material. So this is a leather. This is Milo, a trademarked leather, quote unquote, made from mushroom mycelium. And Milo has been used by Lululemon in some of its products, which is great. Stella McCartney has used it in handbags. She's also used it in yoga pants and bustiers as well. So, in fact, it's so hot that one website a little while ago said mushroom leather is the next big thing in sustainable fashion. So, wouldn't that be great if suddenly our clothing is biodegradable? Well, cotton is, but if plastic clothing became, not plastic and was used by something else. Then we got the ubiquitous Packing peanuts, the plastic packing peanuts come to us. That's polystyrene. That's who that is. Um, so companies are now taking that mycelium and growing them in these shapes of containers and using it in boxes. So they're sending us essentially stuff like all these boxes, right? For perfumes and things, they're sending it to us in boxes as a wine bottle, bottom left, made from mushroom mycelium, which is great. So here's the mushrooms on the left produced, that packaging material on the right. So again, breaks down um, and causes no harm to the environment. So, is it possible that mushrooms will soon both eat and replace plastic in a lot of uses? Wouldn't that be great? So remember, oil is also a complex hydrocarbon like plastics are. And oil causes big problems when it spills. And we all remember, of course, the Deepwater Horizon 15 years ago. And those of us of a certain age remember the Exxon Valdez in 1989. And we still only have three things to do with an oil spill. We can put chemicals on it that disperse it, and the oil is still there. It's just in smaller globs all around the ocean. So we kind of break it up. We can burn it, which causes an air pollution problem, or we can skim it off, if it's floating, skim it off the water and then take it aside and use it and bring it to a toxic waste dump, right? We don't break it down, we just then store it forever. So other scientists are looking at mycelium as a solution to oil spills. So here's a mycelial mat floating in a vat of oil. And this one researcher, right, made this log with mycelium on the inside. And look at bottom right, there's the mushrooms sprouting out, happy mushrooms coming out. So the mycelium is doing so well, they're going to reproduce and make spores. So it's living on oil, which is amazing. So it even has a name, myco, as in mushroom mycoremediation, is a new field of using fungus to remediate toxic waste sites. Okay, let's go to a whole new issue. If you go for a walk in a forest anywhere in southeastern Pennsylvania, you're going to see these small, like shelf-like funguses growing on a tree in these kind of layers. And just in time for the season, it looks like the tail of a turkey. So turkey tail fungus is what its name is. Often has white on the outside like this, just like turkeys do as well. So turkey tail fungus, and its species name is versicolor because it really does come in a wide variety of colors, but it grows in the same pattern. Grows also worldwide. So this is a worldwide fungus. It's really spread. And in Asia, especially in China, they have known of its medicinal properties for a really long time. Turkey tail is believed to strengthen the immune system, help the body fight cancer cells, reduce tumor growth, alleviate the side effects of chemotherapy and radiation, that is fatigue, nausea, immune cell damage. So it turns out that turkey tail might have some benefits for us. And you can now buy powders and pills from a variety of companies. So I'll go to like a Whole Foods, I'll go to their vitamin section, and you can find these supplements that are made from mushrooms, microbiome and immune support. So they do a number of things for us. They strengthen the immune system, improve your gut health, rich in antioxidants, anti-inflammatory, and balance your gut microbiome. So we've known that for a very long time. Paul Stamets is one of the country's, maybe even the world's leading mycologists, mushroom scientist, mycologist. He's got a TED Talk on mushrooms that has now been seen 9 million times. He did a second one where he brought his mom on stage, and she was suffering from cancer. He gave her turkey tail, and she was also on standard treatment at the same time, so she was doing other things too. But he supplemented it with turkey tail, and her cancer disappeared. The tumor vanished. So she credits her son. He credits turkey tail, and it's really worth seeing. It's an inspirational TED Talk. From MycoStories, the website, fungi represent a largely untapped reservoir of potential anti-cancer agents. Their diverse mechanisms of action and ability to synergize with existing therapies position them as key candidates in the next generation of cancer treatment strategies, which is pretty crazy. Piopino mushrooms induce tumor regression, reverse cancer in lab mice. So a lot of research now on the ability of mushrooms to fight cancer. This is a crazy one. Novartis is making Gilenya. Gilenya is used in the treatment of the relapsing form of multiple sclerosis. What's crazy is the mushroom that it comes from. It's an unassuming mushroom. Let me show it what it looks like in the wild. Cordyceps sinclairii, named for Sinclair the scientist, but Cordyceps is a big genus of mushrooms. So those are mushrooms. They're not the gill mushrooms, not the standard ones, but nonetheless, that's what they look like, and they're pretty small. But what's extraordinary about them is their life cycle. Because if you go underground, what you'll see is something really interesting. This is a cicada, and if a spore of the cordyceps gets into the cicada when it's living in the nymph stage underground, right? The cicada is living underground, sucking on the roots of the tree. And then when it's ready to become an adult and make that big loud noise when it's an adult, it crawls up out of the ground. Maybe you've seen the husks they cast off, right? And becomes an adult. But when it's underground, um, and a spore gets into it, then that cicada is in trouble because the spore will germinate and the mycelial threads will grow throughout the inside of the cicada nymph. It won't attack the main, it'll like be in the in-between parts. It won't go into the vital organs at first. So it actually is living with this mycelial thread growing into it, and then it crawls up closer to the surface. It kind of takes over, and the fruiting bodies pop out. So I showed you before the cordyceps underground would be a cicada. There's a second, there it is, there it is. There's a second species of cordyceps that does this to ants. And actually, it zombifies ants, is what some writers will say. So the spore gets into the ant in the rainforest. When the mycelium gets to a certain point in its inside, somehow it gets a cue to the brain to crawl up out of the colony, up the tree, and at a certain level, like a certain number of feet high, and it goes under a leaf and clamps onto the leaf, and then the fruiting body sprouts out of its head, and begins to release spores. So essentially, it's a zombie in that it's like the Walking Dead. This ant is walking, being told what to do by a fungus that has taken over control of its body. And that life cycle inspired, if you're a fan of The Last of Us, the TV show. It's been a couple of seasons. Lots of people love this. So cordyceps inspired the fungus that took over the world in The Last of Us. But look at what cordyceps does for us from research point of views. It impacts the immune system. It helps with colds and flu. It alleviates the symptoms from HIV and AIDS. Helps with cognitive health and neurodegenerative diseases like memory and focus, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, diabetes and blood sugar, fatigue, stamina, chronic fatigue, inflammation, digestive health, liver and kidney health, cardiovascular health, cholesterol levels, blood pressure, mood, anxiety, depression. It's crazy. I don't know who began researching with cordyceps and how they began to do this, but all from that unassuming thing. So that's our health, right? Imagine if mushrooms could work on climate change. Any role could they play in climate change? And we know climate change is happening, right? Sea levels rising, so we're getting more flooding. Storms are intensifying, so even rivers are impacting people who live on riverside towns. Wildfire seasons worldwide. The wildfire season is longer and the fires burn with more intensity. So we know that it's happening. So can climate be addressed in part by fungus? Let's see. Remember, of course, that one of the most important things we can do to combat climate change is to grow lots of trees because trees are sequestering carbon and they're sequestering it for long periods of time. So a tree is trapping carbon for a very long period of time. And those little unassuming mushrooms down there are growing. And now we know about the World Wide Web. And so this one website says fungi may offer jaw-dropping solution to climate change. Mushrooms and fungi are nature's secret allies in combating climate change. Four things to know about fungi, climate warriors. So we're now beginning to appreciate what fungi can do. Fungi stores a third of carbon from fossil fuel emissions and could be essential to reaching net zero, says the study. At the bottom, mycorrhizal fungi are responsible for holding up to 36% of yearly global fossil fuel emissions below ground, more than China emits each year. So mushrooms are suddenly important in the fight for climate change. This makes soil the largest terrestrial sink on the carbon sink on the planet. Researchers are now calling for fungi to be considered more heavily in conservation and biodiversity policies and investigating how we can increase how much carbon the soil underneath us can hold. So mycelium sequesters carbon, makes the forest healthier, stabilizes soil, helps the forest withstand drought and disease, and assists in reforestation. So fungi can play a role even in climate change. Oh, and if we produce materials out of mycelium and not oil, we can lower the carbon footprint of those materials. Wouldn't that be great? So there's a My Bacon now as a product that's a mushroom substitute for bacon. So it's bacon made from mycelium. How about that? And this bacon produces 33% less carbon than the standard one, 98% less land, and 99% less water. So mushrooms will have a huge impact here if we move to that. Okay, so bottom line, will mushrooms help save the world? So we looked at the trash crisis, microplastics, oil spills, your health, cancer, climate change, the global food shortage, if we can feed more people with mushrooms, right? And there's one more. Remember way back, I promised you 8 things that will blow your mind. I only gave you 7. So here comes number 8 as we slide in. Remember those magic mushrooms that we talked about at the beginning? So, Michael Pollan is one of our best nonfiction writers, writes a lot about food, and some of his food books are famous and beloved. But one of his newest books is How to Change Your Mind on the New Science of Psychedelics. And what we are learning now with him and elsewhere is that LSD and psilocybin are being used clinically to treat PTSD, anxiety, and depression. Like it alleviates people of suicidal ideation even. So it's just crazy that that LSD and psilocybin are being used in this new and novel way. Could magic mushrooms cure COVID-related smell loss? So we're discovering that magic mushrooms and LSD have some therapeutic things. So um, there was that famous movie, The Graduate, way back in the 1960s, right? Where the guy pulls Dustin Hoffman aside, got one word to say to you, plastics. I feel like if that movie was made today, he'd say, I got one word to say to you, mushrooms. Because these are all the cool things that mushrooms are doing. If this is of interest to you, this is the best book on mushrooms ever written. He's an extraordinary writer, young British mycologist. Check out Entangled Life. Fantastic Fungi is amazing. You may have seen it on Netflix. It's sometimes available and sometimes not, but check out Fantastic Fungi. I mentioned Paul Stamets and his TED Talk. Check that out. There are websites like Incredible Mushrooms you can go to read about it and get mushroom products. There is a mycology club in Philly, in the region. Go to their website and see where their walks are and go on a mushroom walk with them, or just go on a walk yourself. And check out the mushrooms that you can find in your own forest. So that's our fungal future, how mushrooms will save the world. Well, thank you all for coming. Do check out my website if you get a moment to do that. See where I'm at and check out the book Wild Philly. And Dan, I'm going to open the floor to questions. Dan, I think you're muted.
As a food source, uh, fungi, I guess, provide carbohydrates, but have you looked further into the nutritional, just the basic food materials,
Right,
how
right.
nutritional
No,
they
I
are?
have not. I have not. But they're also providing lots of vitamins and other things. But yeah,
Yes,
I get you. They're not. It's not a protein source. Yeah.
yeah, it's quite
We want to
interesting.
invite people to put questions in chat and or Q&A.
I don't see any yet.
Oh, Best writes, how can we transform our yards with mushrooms and mycelium? Would this significantly help sequester carbon? You know, that's a great question. I don't know the answer. I don't know if that's easy or hard to do. There are mushroom growing kits, but that's for growing mushrooms in your own house for you to eat. Um, can you? There probably are ways to sprinkle the spores, sort of inoculate your backyard and see what happens. I don't know, but that's like if you go to the mycology club, that might be a question that you could ask them, or go to these mushroom websites where they specialize in that. Um, Dan, I can see the questions now. Are there places near Philly where mass production of mushrooms is happening? Just in Kennett Square, where they're making tons and tons and tons and actually they make the basic mushrooms that we can find in supermarkets, but they're also making specialty mushrooms like oyster mushrooms, lion's mane. Um, Phillips Mushroom Farm in Kennett Square has a mushroom museum, and it has a gift shop with lots of mushroom coffee is now being sold. So it's coffee laced with the mushroom supplement. I don't know what the taste. I haven't tried it yet. But yeah, Kennett Square is a place to go. So I think mushroom bacon, Amber, is supposed to taste like bacon. That's kind of the point. And I don't know what they did to do that. But my bacon is supposed to taste like bacon, and that's the goal is to get you to switch over, and you won't do it if that's the case. Um, how did Kennett Square become the mushroom capital? I was just talking to Phillips Mushrooms, and they're like a fourth generation. And I think what happened is somebody, maybe even in that family, was trying to look at what that would grow in the off season and realize you can grow mushrooms indoors. And wouldn't that be a great way to get some income in the off season? So originally it was off season revenue for a working farm, but then ultimately became so lucrative it became the whole operation was subsumed by mushrooms. It is kind of crazy that's all in one place.
Uh, Also, when I went for walks as a high school student, got lost in the woods in the spring, I would hit a mushroom by accident and the spores would just go everywhere.
Yeah.
Uh, and they come out of the gills. Is that correct? They're-
Depend if it's a gill mushroom, yes. Um, there are kinds that grow out of trees like a shelf.
Uh-huh.
Um, they grow, it looks like a horse's hoof sometimes. And there are holes here, and the spores just pour out of the holes. Sometimes on a summer day, it looks like dust is just coming out of them. Puffballs, if you've seen puffballs, uh, if you press one of those, it comes out like a
Yes.
cloud. Um, so yeah, they come out in a variety of ways. Yep.
Yeah.
Melissa wants to know, are there places nearby that are growing mushrooms for environmental positive impact or to be used for medicine? So I don't know of anybody doing that specifically for that, but there are, if you go to farmers markets, many farmers markets will now have, like the one in Bryn Mawr, has a mushroom specialist. And so I think, yes, they know that it's a food, but they also know that there's a real growing interest a, in mushrooms as a cool thing to eat, and B, for their medicinal properties. So you can talk to the woman in Bryn Mawr at the farmers market and ask her about that. So I think she's doing it for a number of reasons, but she's completely aware that people are intrigued by the medicinal properties of mushrooms.
Do you know anything about the soil, that how you condition the soil to grow mushrooms in Kennett Square?
Yeah, no, I don't. I'm sorry. I don't. Yeah.
I've
So, and they're not grown in soil, they're grown in a medium. So I think it's like a hay, for example,
yeah.
that is inoculated with spores, and then they've got this down to the formula, X amount of water over X amount of time, and then it begins to pop up. So it's not really grown in soil. It's grown in another kind of, a different medium.
Organic. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Miriam has a question. Did you answer that? The easiest mushroom variety to grow as a hobbyist?
Oh, I missed that one. I'm sorry. Um, yeah, no, I haven't been brave enough to try this yet. I've just been reading about this for the last year to prepare for this lecture. So I haven't done it myself. I don't know what the easiest one is. Sorry. I wouldn't be surprised if you buy a mushroom kit, it's going to be that white button mushroom, the one that we all have, that you get in the grocery store. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
take that white mushroom and let it get bigger. It becomes, what's the big, it becomes portobello.
Mm-hmm.
So if you let the white mushroom keep growing, you got portobello. It's the same species, not a different mushroom.
How patient do you have to be to wait for a nice size portobello?
Oh yeah, I don't know. That I don't know. Yeah, yeah.
Um, okay. Uh, okay. Q&A is the same as chat, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, folks. Any other questions? I've got something happening in my backyard right now. Is some mushrooms are coming up in the backwoods area in a circle. And I was always taught this was where a tree once existed, and the roots are the base roots are the last to decay. And so that's why they're in a circle.
That's called a fairy ring.
The fairy ring, that's right.
Yeah,
Uh,
and it used to be thought it had magical properties. So, you should go for a dance inside your fairy circle and see what happens.
yeah, right, right.
In the rain. Yeah, mushrooms seem to like rain too. I went for a walk in the Pine Barrens after a rainstorm 2 weeks ago, and uncountable numbers of mushrooms on this along the Batona Trail near Batstow. It was unbelievable. What was also strange is that there was another person who must have been walking ahead of us or the day before, um, who might have had like a walking stick or a branch and just was knocking all the mushrooms over because
Oh,
all the ones close to the trail were like upended, like they were playing golf with him. So there are people, because mushrooms are, some mushrooms are poisonous. There are some people who just don't like them or trust them, and actually will chop them down, which is kind of crazy. But so
you have a new presentation on the Pine Barrens, isn't that correct? I
I
thought I saw.
do. Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
I do.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'll look it up. Um,
And the Jersey Devil's in there too.
yeah, get you scheduled. There's that new Cretaceous uh, theme park in the Pine Barrens too,
In Glassboro.
in Glassboro. Yeah, it's
Right.
very interesting about the
Right.
Cretaceous period and dinosaurs and
Yep.
glaciers, and so. Uh, so everybody, thank you so much. Uh, please stay tuned to the Radnor social media and the EAC website for uh, further EAC lectures, the two I mentioned coming up next year. And I'm going to corral Mike to give a presentation on the Pine Barrens, probably next year as well.
Thank you,
Thank
Dan.
you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Great being with you tonight. Sorry we're not in person. Look forward to doing that next time. And Ian, thanks again for your help with this.